Well, thanks for choosing Morning Live, and a bit of politics early morning. So former President Jacob Zuma's son, Duduzane, is expected to appear at the Johannesburg Specialised Commercial Crimes Court today, and he's expected to be charged in connection with his alleged involvement in the Gupta plot to bribe former Deputy Finance Minister Mcebisi Jonas. Jonas was allegedly offered the position of Finance Minister as well as a bribe of 600 million rand at the Guptas' house in Saxonworld in 2015. And last Thursday, Duduzane landed in South Africa from Dubai for his brother Vusi's funeral on Friday. He was briefly detained, as we understand, at OR Tambo International Airport. So to discuss this and other political stories, we're joined by political analyst Prince Mashele. Welcome and thanks for coming through.
Thank you very much, Sakina.
So let's start with the most pressing issue at the moment. I think everybody very intrigued, concerned to see what actually happens with regards to Duduzane Zuma. But a question that has to be asked is, why now?
Well, what we are witnessing is a confirmation of the way things run in African politics. We have to understand that context. We're an African country. We're not some European country. In Europe, it doesn't matter that you're a son of a president or a relative of someone in power. If you commit a wrong, you get dealt with at that moment. In Africa, it doesn't work that way. It's a different logic. If you commit a wrong and you have someone backing you up who is in power, and it's worse if that person is your father, no one can touch you. So for all the years the NPA has been sleeping, it doesn't mean that the NPA has not been there. It has been there but sleeping. Now, they have been waiting for a political moment when the father is out of power to act. So why now? It's because the father of Duduzane is no longer in office. Then Sean Ebrahim believes and feels emboldened that he can now become a true prosecutor.
And then, of course, looking at how things developed, we understand that Duduzane was briefly detained upon his arrival at OR Tambo International, but then had to be set free because the arresting authorities didn't have the requisite documentation.
Well, it tells you how clumsy and how broken our criminal justice system is. In the first place, as I said earlier on, Duduzane should have been arrested long time ago, should have been made to answer for this crime because this crime was committed a long time ago. So our legal authorities are so messed up that they act on rumors. They are not ready. It shows you that a lot needs to be done to clean up our security system.
And just coming back to the allegations around his alleged involvement in the Gupta plot to bribe the former Deputy Finance Minister, 600 million rand. But quite apart from that, you know, the way all of that unfolded, the boldness to actually go on and make this alleged, effort to try and sway that particular minister to take over the country's purse strings. What do you make of that?
Well, it was arrogance of power. Duduzane knew that he had the mandate and the backing of his father. And he knew that his father was part of a very powerful machinery, the Guptas, operating from Saxonworld. So if you do it once and you see it works and you see your father giving you political protection, what do? You feel more confident to do even more brazen and unbelievable things. So it was Duduzane sat at the heart of state capture in South Africa, and he was so certain that nothing could happen to him. Hence that kind of brazenness.
And of course, it all still has to be tested and proved in the courts of law. But then, of course, we look at that whole tangle, that mash of intricacies involving all the various plots and subplots as we experience through the Gupta leaks. And we look at what's happening now with SARS and the Commissioner Moyane there expected to hold a press briefing later on today. And that, of course, all speaks to the same state capture project.
Well, by the way, what I am saying is actually accepted as legal fact because it is in a report of the public protector. As you know, the Constitutional Court has made a ruling that the reports of the public protector are actually binding until they have been overturned by a court of law. So this specific report we're talking about has not been overturned by a court of law. So everything that is contained in that report remains fact. So what is the fact? The fact is there was a state capture project presided over by the Guptas, who worked with the president, and they actually had tentacles in all powerful and important state institutions, especially the state institutions that had to do with money, because the whole thing was about looting. So SARS and Tom Moyane, what is going on there, they inquire, is about the reach of the Guptas into our fiscus. They had to control SARS because SARS had teeth to bite those who were making money. So that's why Tom Moyane was an important cog in that project.
Important cog, but did that project start with the arrival of Tom Moyane, is what I want to ask?
No, it didn't start with the arrival of Tom Moyane. They made attempts before Tom Moyane was there. But Tom Moyane was an enabler. It was actually very hard before Tom Moyane took over SARS for them to do the sort of things that they did under Tom Moyane. SARS, as you know, was one of the best tax authorities in the world. It was actually the envy of the world. It was one of the well-functioning institutions until Tom Moyane got there. But there was, for example, Makwakwa, who was there before Tom Moyane was there. So it is very clear that they had tried to infiltrate the institution, but they didn't do it on the scale that they did when Tom Moyane was there.
Well, let's take a look at some of the messages our viewers are weighing in on this conversation as well. And they're sending us tweets on @MorningLive SABC. Silo says the justice system is selective to act. Didn't they know that Duduzane was doing all that he's accused of all along? And why only act now after President Zuma is removed from power? What if NDZ had won? Would this have happened? And I think this is exactly what Prince was talking about. Sipo says, it's long overdue. Let's see how he can fight without daddy's protection. And then another one comes from Jeffrey. Jeffrey says, my thoughts are how? Did Zuma's son get involved in crime and corruption? What kind of father leads his child to get involved into deeper end of pursuing corruption within the office of the presidency and government departments? Why did he run away when law enforcement was looking for him? This one's from Velisile, who says, I do not think Duduzane will get a fair trial. This is because his father is no longer president and he is also facing charges of his own. And Tato says, just another case involving a rich man. The justice system in South Africa favors the middle class and top class citizens of South Africa. The poor will always face the wrath of the law. And Born to Impact Live says, let justice prevail. We can no longer allow certain individuals to do as they please in our country. Well, by no means empirical, but it does give us a sense of what South Africans are thinking.
Here's the thing. South Africans are not fools. They know the truth. All of us in our millions, we know that Duduzane Zuma didn't face the legal music precisely because his father was president. No one doesn't know that. We all know that. That's why those who are writing are saying what they are saying. But there's a point here about justice, fair trial. He will get fair trial. Our legal system, the judiciary specifically, has not been corrupted. In fact, it has been the guardian of whatever semblances of legal stability that remain in our system. So in other words, he was simply not being arrested. Once he is arrested and is handed over to the judges, no one says our judges are actually unfair. Our judges have been fair. So he will get a fair trial. What is important is that finally he has to face the music. When there are allegations, they must be tested in court.
So on another issue, the land question, and that's come into stark focus. President Cyril Ramaphosa over the weekend going to KZN and visiting with the Amazulu King Goodwill Zwelithini. What was your take on that?
Well, I found it very bizarre that a whole state president could go and kneel before a king of a subgroup of a country. Remember, Zwelithini is not a king of South Africa, he's a king of the Zulus. So I find it very bizarre, number one. But there are serious implications. will President Cyril Ramaphosa go and kneel before every king of every group in South Africa? Now there is a king of the vendors who is allegedly involved in crime with regard to VBS. What if that king mobilizes the vendors and say, I think that I'm going to be arrested, I'm being set up? Will Ramaphosa go and kneel before that king and say, that is not going to happen? If he doesn't go and kneel, why is he kneeling before the Zulu king? Dalindyebo is in prison. Will you go to prison and kneel before Dalindyebo and release him from prison? It's very problematic. He's setting a very dangerous precedent. I think he was ill-advised. If he was not ill-advised, he himself can't think clearly.
I think Controlesa already setting that particular issue in motion, saying that they actually now expect him to go and speak to all the other kingships in the country. And as you say, will he do what he did in KZN? And if he doesn't, if he fails to do that, what are the implications thereof?
He has already communicated the message. One, that the Zulu king is very powerful and that the state president is scared of him. That is the message. Now, what kind of a president is scared of a king? Number two, on the land debate. Remember, there are consultative meetings that are taking place in South Africa as we speak. He has already given the king assurance of the outcome of a process that has not been concluded. He said, no, we are not going to take, the state is not going to take over land owned by Ingonyama Trust. But what if that's what South Africans want? The state president has already undermined a very important debate. So, Controlesa is correct. Cyril Ramaphosa tomorrow must go to the king of the Xhosas. From there, he must go to the king of the vendors and kneel before them. And actually say to South Africans, he treats all of us equally. If he doesn't, then he must explain to us why must other groups take him seriously.
And just staying with the Ingonyama Trust for a moment and some of the debate around that. So the president states that they will not touch the Ingonyama Trust, as you say, already preempting the outcome of a certain process. But more importantly, in as much as the Ingonyama Trust is said to have its basis in tradition, there has been questions raised about its constitutionality.
True. And there was a commission of inquiry set up by Parliament, presided over by former President Kgalema Motlanthe, and that has produced recommendations. Now, those recommendations, as I understand it, were supposed to be processed through this entire consultative process that is taking place in South Africa. Already, President Cyril Ramaphosa has undermined that process by going to the king of the Zulus to say, don't worry, we are not going to implement the recommendations.
Is there perhaps a bigger picture issue here at play? Because going into elections next year, just how important is KwaZulu-Natal as a province and, of course, the traditional leadership overall, but specifically in that province, to the election and elective fortunes of the African National Congress?
Look, there is politics in what we are seeing. Here is the politics. Cyril Ramaphosa is the new president of the ANC. He is vendor. He has taken over the ANC from a Zulu. Already there are actions in KwaZulu-Natal. Cyril Ramaphosa doesn't have quite support in KwaZulu-Natal. So he is actually, he doesn't have confidence that he is in charge of the entire country. So when he hears that the Zulu king is insinuating that KwaZulu-Natal might break out of South Africa, which, by the way, will not happen, he gets scared. So what does he do? He runs to KwaZulu-Natal to say to the king, no, don't worry, we are not going to touch your interests. So the politics here is a vendor president who is trying very hard to gain authority over KwaZulu-Natal. That's the politics.
Well, do you agree with Prince Mashele? And thanks to him, political analyst, for chatting to us this morning. But we always want to hear from you at Morning Live, SABC, #MorningLive. Let us know what your thoughts are. We can go to a break, and when we come back, we'll bring you the latest news.